Hey, this is my recap of The Little Couple, Season 6, Episode 13, All You Wanted to Know. So get in line with the camera. So this is an episode where they got questions from the viewers, they ask the little couple, the couple answers, and then they use video footage, some of it unseen, to kind of support their answers. So I don't really know how great of a recap this is going to be, but I'm going to try it anyway. So they have, I would say a majority of the show was about the kids. So we'll just kind of get into that. They talked about, the kids are really close. They're always together. They're always doing stuff. Zoe's a lot like Jen. She likes shoes and clothing and is very decisive. Will is, some of their strong points is Will is caring. He's emotionally very intelligent. So he really gets kind of how people are. And he's a great sense of humor. Zoe is smart, she's decisive, she's opinionated, and expressive. So we're kind of really getting to see their kids and what their kids are like, which is so fun. Some of the challenges of parenting are discipline, which they mostly use like timeouts and stuff. Trying to be both, Bill does describe it as being friends. I don't know if I describe it that way, but he feels like he wants to be his kids' friends and do really cool stuff with them, and yet still being a parent and kind of helping them grow. They address the issue of Zoe and crying. So if you watch the show, you know that she cried a lot. So I guess basically the first 6 hours she just hung on Bill and just wanted to be with them constantly. And then for like 6 weeks, she wanted nothing to do with them as she just cried and cried. And they said at the orphanage, they said she probably won't like Bill very much because everyone who worked at the orphanage was female, and so she didn't really have much interaction with males. So I guess that does make sense that she might be a little hesitant. And in one of the Christmas episodes we saw he was laying on the ground. I think he was putting together a train, and she kind of laid down on top of him and he just stayed there. And he said that was kind of one of those moments where she was going from get this guy away from me to he's not so bad, maybe I'll hang out with him. And he said that was kind of right at that time period is when that happened. Let's see, some of the joys of parenthood are their smiles and their kisses and just being able to spend time with them. And one of the last topics they addressed is the fact that the kids are also little people. And so they asked, well, when are you going to talk about it and tell them about it? And they're like, we're not. They're going to know. And they each talked about their life experience, and they agreed that somewhere around kindergarten is when they started to notice that they were different than other people and they weren't as tall, and asking their parents, like, why am I different? So they kind of expect that that'll be happening probably for Will within the next year. But right around 5 or so is when they start to notice the differences between them and other people. And I think that's common, a common age for kids to realize that. And they have a very realistic belief that their kids will probably be at some point bullied or picked on because they're physical parents. And I think that any parent should be prepared for that, because I've never heard of a kid who's never had anyone say anything mean to them. I haven't heard of an adult who doesn't have something mean said to them on a daily basis or a weekly basis. I don't leave the house a lot, so sometimes I can manage to skate through, although YouTube and Twitter help me to connect with the jerks out there. But I think it's pretty common that kids will encounter, no matter how well loved or awesome they are, they're going to encounter criticism growing up. So they know that's going to happen, and they're kind of just prepared to deal with it. Now, one of the things they did answer that I did not know and actually had assumed incorrectly was why they adopted out of the country. I assumed it's because in America, the wait list for adoption in the country is like 5 years. We have a friend who waited 5 full years to adopt, had been on a waiting list that whole time. But what they said is they wanted to adopt little people, and Will and Zoe were little people, and one was in India and one was in China, and so that's where they got their kids. And that makes sense. I am sure that they would be perfectly capable of adopting and raising average-sized kids, but I think it's really cool that they reached out to kids where their personal life experience and would be able to help their children. They'd be able to guide them in a way that someone of average height might not be able to, a certain amount of being able to relate. So I think it's really cool. I think any parent who got Will or Zoe would be incredibly blessed. They are such cute, adorable, smart kids. So they said that those were the kids that were designed for them, and And I think it's evident that if you watch the show, those are the kids. Sorry, I'm getting all emotional. Those are the kids they were meant to have. Sorry, man. The show just kills me. So they talk a little bit about Jenn's cancer. She is now considered cured in the sense that she has had zero. Her numbers have been zero for quite a while now. She says that there is a chance of relapse, about 10%. And if it happens, it is most likely to happen in the first few years, so she's being monitored constantly. And that she got through it, and, you know, with the fact that she does have a nanny, she has friends and family that help support her during that time. And that's definitely true. My father-in-law is going through lymphoma treatment right now, and people are so amazing at helping out, and it's been a huge blessing. They talk a little bit about their relationship, which is a big part, I believe, of why the show is a success. Jenn and Bill are awesome together. She's so cute and funny and peppy all the time, and he's so supportive, and they clearly love each other just unbelievably. So they talk a lot about compromise and that they fight, but the relationship's more important than individually being right. And there's a whole big diatribe about from Bill about how Jenn gave out these back rubs before they were married, and then they got married, and suddenly she doesn't want to give out back rubs. And it made me laugh because it sounded very, very much, it sounded very similar to things I've heard in my relationship. And then they talk a little bit about behind the scenes, which I love. You know, if you don't know, I was a host and a producer on a competitive reality show, and I'd love to continue to work in reality TV. I just love I love everything about it. And one of the things that I just love to learn about is how other shows did it. I worked on a very small set on it was on NBC Sports, so it wasn't as much of a mainstream reality channel as say, TLC. And so I'm always curious about how other shows do it. So we got to see a lot about how the kids react to the camera, which Will is really comfortable, and I guess Zoe has a tendency to like grab the camera, and they both love all the equipment. And they talked about traveling and how much of their crew went with them, and they've clearly become very close with their crew, which makes sense because one, they're awesome people, and two, they've worked together for years and years and years. So we're on season 6, so like 6 years at least. And they do talk a little bit about how they set up things, like the first time they got to meet Will and Zoe, and keeping the crew as small as possible so that they could have that intimate moment with their child and still document it for the world, which I really appreciate because those were such amazing moments to watch. And the last thing they talked about was that when people come up to them and say, you know, you're like part of our family. And that's something I can definitely relate to. And watching their struggle with infertility and eventually adoption has been, really, really cool to watch and very important to me. So I thank them a lot personally. Anyway, enough of all this emotional stuff. I will see you guys soon.